10. Lessons that animals teach. We have been linked to animals and have shared this planet with them since the beginning of human time. We are connected to all sentient beings. The illusion of separateness is what fuels such pain and suffering in our world. Animals have souls too, and they have their own lessons to learn. The brief but brilliant life of a butterfly may be a quick foray into experiencing the physical world, and to cast off your past with the sudden realization that you were born to fly is to undergo a spiritual as well as physical metamorphosis. The tortoise, in its century-long stay on Earth, may encounter a vast multitude of lessons. Around it, the years come and go, teaching of life's impermanence and the truth that everything shall pass. Yet animals are also the instructors. The hummingbird sips the nectar of life, reminding us to taste its sweetness. Dogs are often the embodiment of loyalty and loving service. To watch tiny ants working together tirelessly to build astonishingly intricate cities and civilizations is to understand the power of community and perseverance. All animals have much to teach us about unconditional love, about intuition and instinct, and about living life in a fearless way. Our pets can help us during our transitions after death. They are frequently there to greet us and comfort us on the other side after we die and leave our physical bodies. They also reincarnate, as so many pet owners know. They can come to us again and aid us more than once during our particular lifetime. They can reunite with us in our future lives. Their expression of love for us never ends. They will oftentimes sacrifice themselves for their owners. People tend not to do that for each other. Animals are ubiquitous and loving beings, helping to herd us back to our spiritual paths if we happen to stray. In that sense, even our birds, horses, and other pets have a bit of the sheepdog archetype in them. It is a well-known saying that cats have 9 lives. Of course they do. All animals and people do, and many, many more than that. What a gift it is to share them together. Memories of Magic. In my years of working as a professional animal communicator, I have been continually touched by the healing impact that understanding our relationships with animals can have. One of the most intense and emotionally complicated bonds I have had is with my horse, Magic. We are close, yet over the years our relationship brought inexplicable challenges that were not easily resolved, no matter how many trainers we went through. One day, on my Wisconsin horse farm, when I was struggling to understand the depth of my feelings for Magic, my spirit traveled, first reminiscing in this life about him, and then to an ancient time where Native Americans and horses lived side by side. These visions helped me to understand my present-day conflict with him. Discovering my soul connection with Magic opened a door that brought peace to a grief I didn't even know was there. My emotions regarding Magic intensified during the summer of 2006. As the heat reached its peak, so did my frustration. "I'm so angry at you," I screamed, standing next to him as flies buzzed around us, gripping the riding crop over my head and ready to whip his back. "I hate you! I hate you!" Clenching my jaw, I hit Magic instead on the neck with the flat of my hand. I reeled backward and stiffened my body as my breath sucked into my chest. Hesitantly, I turned my head to face him and saw my reflection deep within his liquid eye. His black and white body froze in place like the cold metal gate next to us, yet his skin quivered across the tense muscles on his neck. I dropped the whip from my hand, collapsing into sobs on the dirt in my barn. "What is wrong with me?" I cried, repulsed and shocked at this intense hostility that I harbored for a horse I deeply loved. I shrouded my head in my sweatshirt and continued to weep. As I sat there, the familiar horse odor that had saturated the fabric of my sweatshirt transformed into a faint but discernible smell of sweet sage. Sitting up and pulling the sweatshirt off, I flipped it around, examining it for fragments of the herb, but finding only tear spots that had stained the cloth black. With the next breath, the wafting fragrance filled my nostrils again. The scent of the sage acted as a conduit to the near past, and then to a past life, as images began to unveil in my head. I closed my eyes, following this familiar aroma through time to when I first met my beloved and difficult horse 6 years ago. Magic and I had found each other at a stable where I was working. His lanky 3-month-old body felt familiar, and when my heart jolted in confirmation, I knew he was the one. Weeks earlier, after praying for direction from my guardian angel about a new horse, she had told me about his coming. She went on to say that we would share an intense connection. Incredibly, we had both survived major fires. The presence of his raw, burnt legs, caused from running through smoldering hay, brought forth the agony of my own car fire when a semi-trailer hit my vehicle and I became trapped inside. I ultimately jumped through the flames as my only escape. I desperately sought to forget this trauma, but I couldn't run away. We needed each other. Over time, I would help him heal his legs, and he would help me heal deep emotional wounds. After we had been together for almost 6 years, the last 2 felt almost unbearable because of Magic's new sassy and unyielding nature. During brief, calm moments, however, he repeatedly told me, "I'm sorry," and "forgive me." Why would a horse care so much about these topics anyway? I was constantly amazed that I found myself angrier in his presence than with any person or animal I had ever known. Then, one evening after kayaking with my friend Mary, it all began to make sense. "It's getting dark. We'd better get our kayaks out of the water," I remember saying, shivering while looking down into the dank, shallow water of Badfish Creek. "I don't know why I feel so creeped out here all the time. It doesn't make sense. I've felt that every time I've been here, even though it's been years now." Together, we pulled the boats up the muddy embankment onto the grass. To get them home, we would need my truck, which was parked at my horse farm just a short distance away. Walking across my neighbor Doug's hayfield was the shortest route. Instead of leaving right away, however, we felt compelled to linger and talk about our favorite parts of the day. Suddenly I felt a large, strong, and kind hand against my back. The hand gently pressed against me like a pilgrim touching a sacred site. I was not scared and lengthened my back into this soft, deep connection. My rational mind thought, "It must be Doug." I turned, but only the muddy edge of the creek returned my look. There was nobody. I flung my head around and blinked my eyes in confusion. "Mary, a man just touched my back. I swear I'm not crazy." "I know," she said. "You do? How?" "I just saw about 20 people standing behind you. They were dressed—" "No, you look," she said patiently. "Look in your mind's eye." Closing my eyes and taking a deep breath, I asked to see who was there. Immediately there was a large group of Native Americans standing in front of me, emanating love and telepathically sending me these words: "We love you. We are so happy you are here. Please know we forgive you. All wrongs are released." The man who had touched my back looked wise, like a trusting father. Next to him, a large woman who radiated love was enfolding me in a warm embrace, and each person in turn sent what felt like an incredible hug. "We will send you more visions to bring you full understanding and forgiveness for yourself and your horse," they said. I knew that they were speaking of Magic. Once again, I had no idea what I would need forgiveness for, and I wondered what Magic had to do with this. I opened my eyes and walked across the dark field with Mary. My bones vibrated inside my body as I felt myself like a seed, sprouting, changing, and growing. I wasn't sure I was ready for this, but seeds sprout and grow regardless. Weeks passed before the next full vision emerged during a deep meditation, in which I saw myself in a past life as a Native American woman with my baby and husband. "Hey, stop that," I was saying, and I giggled as my husband grabbed me around the waist. I could feel the heat radiate off his taut body as he stood beside me. "I'm going to get you, Shayna," he teased, as he crouched on leather hides that covered the dirt floor inside our home. His big eyes glowed with playfulness, and he darted between our small daughter and me. "You are just a little bear," I said. "You think you're so big and strong that you should be called Big Bear. No way. You're always going to be my little bear." I continued to pester him as I swooped up Ayesha, our baby, and ran out of our hut into the sunlight. "Grr," he growled, with his big hands made into claws. "Here I come." With Ayesha at my waist, we ran through the trees and out into the field. "I'm coming, Shayna. You girls had better run." As I looked down at my daughter's soft tuft of black hair, we pranced like sneaky cats to hide among our herd of horses. As we moved into the open grass field, a rush of earthen-smelling wind brushed our faces. Ayesha cooed and flung her arms up in excitement at the sight of the paint horses gathered around us in different hues of black, white, and gold. Nestled in the middle of the herd, we peeked over the white mane of Magic, looking for my husband. I had no sooner mumbled, "Where's Papa, Ayesha?" when I heard, "Boo!" and felt warm fingertips grabbing my shoulder. I spun around, and he was standing behind us. "How did you get there?" "You see, my wife, I am a fast warrior." I raised my eyebrows and nodded. Then Magic's fuzzy black and white nose hit me, as if he wanted in on the fun. I grabbed my head, for he wasn't gentle, and it hurt. "That horse of yours is rude," I said in irritation. "You should trade him to another tribe." "Never," he said. "He has power." "Too much. He's going to hurt one of us," I recalled saying, and then the image faded out. I opened my eyes as the past life ended. I knew from this little story that I had loved my husband and daughter. My sense of unity in the tribe was deeply rooted to my connection with them. Magic was challenging in that life, too. I relaxed my shoulders, knowing that his sassy behavior did not just start with me in this life. A week later, I found myself focusing on another scene from that same past life, one in which there was a small crowd of people grieving and hunched over by a man lying on the sun-warmed grass. Some of them were chanting quietly as they passed sage through the air. A heavy-set woman adorned in a skirt made of leather and beads was off to the side, bouncing a toddler on her hip. Near her, a young woman with dark hair knelt on the ground in a simple buckskin dress. The smell of sage filled my nose as vividly as it had that day in the stable with Magic. I cautiously moved across the green field to take a better look. Who are these people? Then it became clear that the young woman kneeling on the ground, wailing inconsolably, was Shayna. This time I was a witness to the scene instead of actually experiencing it again. The sun beat down on her hair, reflecting a halo of bright, arching rainbows. Her hands flung out from her chest and then back again, pulling at her clothing. I looked past her to the face of the fallen man. It was Little Bear. I grimaced upon seeing blood flowing out of his head, staining the grass. He was not breathing. Kindness shone out of his face, even in death. Splayed around his head, his long hair, matted and sticky, covered a rock. Red droplets smeared its surface as flies buzzed around it. Slowly turning to the left, I saw a black and white horse standing solemnly as leather reins dangled off his head onto the ground. Magic? My mind reeled. "Oh, my goodness, you were involved with my husband's death? No wonder I've been angry with you." The landscape blurred while I gazed at Little Bear. My breathing became shallow as I bent down and looked right into the woman's face. Suddenly I became filled with incredible sorrow and grief. This was really my life that I was seeing. The devastation of her loss filled me. Her love was gone, and she felt utterly alone. Shayna fell back on her haunches as she pulled clumps of grass out of the earth. Gasps from her open mouth were barely audible as I looked around, imploring support. No one could see or hear me, Dropping the dead grass, she stared vacantly, the grief of losing her young husband etched in her eyes. I tried to reach out telepathically and send her the thoughts, "It's going to be okay. You're going to live in a house across this field someday. You're going to make it." But she could not hear me. The heavy-set woman called to the toddler who had wiggled free, "Come back here, Ayasha." Oblivious to the tragic sight, she bumbled toward her mother. Shayna spun around and gripped her daughter at the waist. Her hands convulsed, pinching the child's bare skin, causing her to cry. She stared at the screaming Ayasha as she pushed her to the ground. Shayna looked around at the clan, steadying her gaze on each of them, her jaw clamped tight. They all turned away, staring at their feet and shuffling them in the dirt. The same large woman picked up the crying Ayasha and walked off. Another group of people came running to the scene, attracted by the commotion. "What is going on?" they asked at once. A tall, slender man with gray braided hair stepped forward. Little Bear rode on Magic fast and playfully. We were all watching and encouraging him. Then Magic flipped his head in defiance and slipped into a slight gorge, throwing both of them to the ground. Little Bear hit the rock and died. The new arrivals walked over to Little Bear and paid their respects. I saw my native self get up from her dead husband's side and walk into the crowd, taking her baby from the arms of the large woman. In silence, she walked away with the child resting on her hip. No one followed her. Shayna moved across a field of yellow flowers and headed into the woods. The tall, thick-barked trees emitted a pungent, earthy smell, and the purifying scent of water filled the air. As she slipped down the grassy, twig-covered hill, she used one hand to keep from falling while the other grasped her beautiful daughter. The sound of rushing water became thunderous. Shayna stepped into the quick-flowing stream, immersed up to her thighs. Struggling against the water's flow while moving deeper into the powerful current, she took the child from her hip and slowly immersed the baby's chubby torso into the swirling water. She took a deep breath and lowered her daughter below the water's surface. Shayna's arms stiffened. Ayasha's tiny body went limp. Shayna turned toward the current, feeling her baby's soft skin for the last time, and let go, watching as her dreams and sweet baby daughter floated into the woods and darkness. Screaming and pulling at her hair in mad grief, she leaped back up the embankment and ran out of the woods, through the field, toward her husband's lifeless body. The clan, shocked at the sight of Shayna without her beloved baby, frantically searched each other's arms with their eyes. "No!" someone cried out. "She took the baby with her." Hunan, Little Bear's younger brother, grabbed her arms and screamed, "Where is the baby?" Shayna pulled her arms free and slapped him across the face. He dove at her waist, pushing her to the ground. The large woman rushed in with intense eyes. "Someone run to the river!" she yelled. 5 natives raced across the field through the woods and down into the creek. They searched in desperation among the downed trees at the creek's edge as the sounds of splashing water echoed hauntingly across the land. "You're too late!" Shayna screamed at them. Glaring at Magic, she cried, "Everyone I love is dead now, and it's all because of that black and white horse." A wave of knowing that the child was indeed dead flashed over the large woman's face, and she said, shaking her head, "Let her up." They moved away from her in disgust and shock. The images turned to black as I felt myself pulled back to my present life. Sobbing, I opened my eyes. I sat in my current bedroom, filled with grief, gratitude, and understanding of why my tribe had come back to me. It would not be easy, but I knew that I could now truly heal. Shame was a thread that had woven itself through my life. No matter how hard I tried, I could never find the source until magic led me on the path to love, peace, and self-forgiveness. The love that our wise animals give us so that we may be free is incredible. With my beloved horse's persistence and the beseeching love of my past life family, I learned that no mistake is too big to be forgiven, even lifetimes away. Asia Voigt. In this very powerful narrative, Asia enables us to glimpse an important role that animals play in the lives of humans. Animals teach us about unconditional love, and they often devote their entire lives to this purpose. Their love is not dependent on our behavior. It is strong and unwavering. We do not need to earn it. It is freely given and not arbitrarily withdrawn. We can know this love and feel it at a deep level. Animals reincarnate, as Magic's story illustrates. Their souls may not be as individuated as those of humans. Perhaps their family or group soul mingles more, but this distinction is not an important one. Guilt and shame are negative emotions that cause us great discomfort and disability. They are partly caused by our belief that we have not lived up to some arbitrary level of thought and conduct. We have disappointed ourselves by not conforming to an internalized and very lofty standard of behavior. Our failure creates anger, and the anger is directed inward. Depression and despair often follow. The whole process is preventable. The past is an excellent teacher, but once you have learned the material, you need not keep studying it over and over again. Doing so will only prevent your education from advancing. Learn from the past, then let it go. We have all made mistakes in our present lives and throughout all our past lifetimes. Clear awareness of our mistakes allows for correction and the intention not to repeat them. Intense guilt, shame, and anger fog our vision and thus obscure the lessons, which only leads to repetition of the mistakes. These negative emotions block our growth and steal our joy. Non-judgmental awareness dissolves harmful negativity and helps us to regain our bearings. Magic returned to teach Asia these lessons. He was the doorway into the past life that contained so much tragedy, loss, grief, and shame. He would have spent his entire life helping her make this connection so that she could begin to forgive herself. He would do this out of love, for the love of our pets is limitless. We may be angry at them, yell at them, and even hit them, and yet they patiently wait for the lesson to unfold. Magic waited 6 years. He would have waited for all of eternity. The mechanisms through which animals relay such important messages to humans can take a variety of forms. Magic facilitated a journey into Asia's past that allowed her to come to a transformative understanding. Ozzy, the dog featured in the following story, used a more hands-on approach, so to speak. In his own unassuming way, he managed to both affirm the existence of an afterlife and reassure his owner's friend that her beloved husband, despite his death, had never left her side. Proof of presence. I asked my friend Hillevi to share her lovely story. As she tells it, I was married to a wonderful man named Robert, who passed away. Several years after his death, I visited my friend Mara, who had met Robert once 12 years earlier. Mara and I lived in different parts of the country, so we did not have the chance to meet or visit each other often. Mara had offered to give me a reading. She had attended some of your seminars in Florida, and she has had many accurate experiences reading people. I gave her Robert's wedding band. She put it in her hand, and we sat across from each other. Mara had her back to the window, and I had my back toward the apartment. Her Maltese dog, Ozzy, slept next to us on the floor. We both sat very quietly, waiting for Mara to get messages. She told me the information that she received, and I said, "But how do I really know that Robert is with us?" Suddenly we heard a loud bang. I turned around, and on the tile floor behind me was a small wood-framed photo of Robert. Next to it was Ozzy, who only was twice the size of the framed photo. What was so amazing about this is that the photo of Robert had been in the bedroom, tucked behind some bags and a large suitcase. What made Ozzy awaken, get up from the floor, go into the bedroom, and bring the photo to the living room? This is something that he had never done before or since. I went to take a look in the bedroom, and neither the bags nor the suitcase were moved. The floors are tiled, so we would have heard if Ozzy had dragged the wooden frame across it. Instead, he had put the frame in his mouth, carried it 15 feet, and then dropped it on the floor behind me. How he did this I am not sure, but Mara and I strongly felt that Robert was with us, helping Ozzy to carry the photo into the living room and drop it with a loud bang. This was Robert's way of answering my question. Mara Gober. The instinctual mind of animals is not obstructed by the logical, thinking, analytical functions that the human brain and mind possess. This frees them to be more attuned to communications of diverse frequencies, vibrations, and sources. Perhaps Robert found it easier to connect directly with Ozzy, who then performed a rather complex task of locating the unique photo, bringing it from deep within the other room, and dropping it right behind Hillevi. What are the odds of that? Walter Jacobson, a psychiatrist, wrote on his blog about his experience while attending my week-long training at Omega. During one of the group regressions, Walter saw, in his mind, the image of 2 cupped hands. But as a self-professed left-brained and analytical person, he found himself unable to recall a past life or any other images during the first few days of the workshop. On the 4th day, I brought Walter on stage to demonstrate how to perform a regression on someone who was having difficulty remembering his past lives. The cupped hands that Walter had previously visualized were my entry point into his past life. When people have hands, they usually have feet, and so I guided Walter to look down at his. He could see them now, clad in men's leather sandals, and he could also see that he was next to a river. What was the significance of the cupped hands? At first I thought that he must have been interacting with another person, but as we delved further into the scene, we realized that his dying dog was lying on the ground beside him. Walter had been gathering the water from the river and holding it up to his beloved dog's face, for the dog was too weak to drink on his own. The gesture was an incredibly compassionate one, and the entire audience of workshop participants was visibly moved by the profound love between man and dog. Not long after, the dog died, and Walter, now left completely alone, was filled with sadness. I asked Walter what he had learned from that lifetime, and his answer was simple and heartfelt. Love. More understandings about that lifetime came to Walter after the regression. As he wrote, "The lesson from my past life regression was not simply about love, but about devotion as well. Devotion is a very important part of the lesson I'm here to learn. When I care for my dog, I need to do it with devotion to her needs being met more than mine. When I care for our horses, the same needs to be true, that I am fully present, fully dedicated, fully communicative, and fully nurturing. And last but not least, I need to be devoted in my service to others, in the expression of my compassion, acceptance, and forgiveness of everyone whose path I cross, and in my bonding with my significant others." Upon browsing the Omega bookstore that week and entering its back room, Walter looked down and saw a statue, an exact replica of the 2 cupped hands that he had envisioned. The sculpture was entitled, "The Hands of God." Recently, I was reading the local newspaper and becoming dismayed by the relentless chronicling of hatred and violence occurring all over the world. People were being brutally attacked and left for dead in the streets. A teenager was shot and killed in a hate crime merely because of the color of his skin. Literally right underneath this last article was a piece about 2 cats, and I silently blessed the newspaper for including this wonderful story of love and devotion. An elderly Floridian woman had become enamored with and adopted 2 kittens from the same litter, a brother and sister whom she named Jack and Jill. The woman eventually moved to Maine, but Jack ran away just before she left, and she was forced to leave without one of her treasured pets. A neighbor happened to find the lost cat and called the woman in Maine, only to learn that she had died, and that her relatives had given Jill to a local animal shelter 2 months prior. The neighbor grew troubled that Jill was all alone, and she scoured the shelters in Maine to find her. After prayers and a painstaking search of hundreds and hundreds of cats, Jill was located. However, the neighbor could not afford the $500 needed to transport the cat back to Florida. As she told the story to her coworkers at the country club, they banded together, along with others who had heard the story, to collect the money on her behalf. Within only 2 days they had reached their goal, and not long after, Jill was back home finally and happily reunited with her brother Jack. Reading this, I was reminded of Walter's memory of lovingly cupping his hands to quench the thirst of his dying dog. We humans are capable of expressing great compassion and devotion to our beloved pets. To expend so much energy and money to reunite 2 cats is such a noble and tender act. Furthermore, so many had come together to achieve this goal, not only the determined neighbor, but also the patrons, members, and staff of the country club who had pitched in to cover the cost. If only we could treat other people with the same careful compassion that we extend to our pets, then our newspapers would not be filled with accounts of atrocities. The papers would instead feature stories of charity, kindness, and hope. Humans are important too. People are so wonderfully devoted to their pets, in fact, that they often ask me if we can reincarnate as animals, and if we have inhabited those kinds of bodies before our human ones. I do believe that it is possible that we've had lifetimes in animal form. It could be that we simply do not remember these lifetimes. During regressions, human memories are more easily accessible, and they are most likely the ones in which traumas and symptoms have their origins. In my own work with patients, I have found that once you become a human, you tend to stay a human. I've personally yet to encounter any people who were sent back to the animal kingdom as a form of punishment for being too violent or too hurtful in their human lives. Rather, there seems to be a progression to the human level, and it is the level where, for the time being, our lessons are to be learned. We can change our species and kingdom if we choose to, for that may offer us a new avenue for learning. We can explore animal consciousness, or plant consciousness, or even the consciousness of the clouds, as other stories in this book demonstrate. Why should we ever put any limits on our awareness, on our soul? Guider. Omega is a truly special place, one where amazing and wonderful things of a synchronistic nature regularly transpire. People meet people they are meant to meet and get messages and answers they dearly need. Miraculous happenstances are virtually commonplace there. When they occur, the feeling one gets is, "Wow, of course! This is what was needed, wanted, hoped for, and meant to be." I went there for 4 consecutive years to learn from Brian and Carol, to regress as many people as I could, and to open myself and embrace whatever miraculous synchronicities would come my way. In August 2006, before going to Omega, I had recently returned from visiting my brother in Texas. While there, I took advantage of the opportunity to see my dear friend, Dr. Jerry Casebolt. Jerry is a great healer, a shaman who also happens to be a licensed, experienced chiropractor. People who go to see Jerry must be prepared for something different, something special in the way of treatment. Chiropractic bodywork, breathwork, deep tissue shiatsu massage, some rolfing techniques, guided imagery, hypnosis, and deeply moving and relevant storytelling that mixes archetype, metaphor, symbolism, and allegory. These are all of the tools of Jerry's work, and he uses them brilliantly and seamlessly. When I went to see Jerry that summer, I had recently snapped my left Achilles tendon, having fallen off a ladder. Suffice it to say, I was experiencing significantly less range of motion and immense pain. While working on my leg and back, which was excruciating, Jerry began to talk to me, as he always did. First, he took me through a full-body relaxation and healing meditation, in which I visualized a white, healing light entering the top of my head, passing through my entire body, and leaving through my feet. He then asked me to visualize an animal coming to visit me, to give me a message of healing. Immediately I saw an immense owl, a great horned owl, and I told him so. Good. That is your power animal, and he's here to help you to heal, Jerry said. What is his name? His name is Guider, I replied. What followed, as Jerry continued to work on me, often burying his thumb or elbow into my body to work out a knot somewhere, was a beautiful visualization of Guider showing me the way to greater awareness, insight, health, and wholeness. It was so beautiful, so real and powerful. I cried. A few weeks later, I found myself at Omega Institute for the first time, and I was so excited to experience mediumship through psychometry and to conduct my first regression that I remained on campus after class, talking with classmates and doing more regressions until 9:30 that evening. It was very dark, and I was exhausted and exhilarated as I walked toward the parking lot to begin the 20-minute drive back to my hotel in town. I was full of excitement from the day's events, literally spiritually high, and I loved it. In a field in front of the dining hall, I observed a beautiful ceremony. A large group of women, approximately 150 of them, were standing there on the grass in a huge circle, each holding a candle. I stopped and listened from under a nearby tree. They were singing a song in unison, and as each refrain ended, 2 new women from the circle would step into it, move in opposite directions, and stop to hug each and every woman. These are the words they so wonderfully chanted. Dear sister, I must let you know. You have loved me all these years, and I love you so. That was it. Such a simple, beautiful sentiment. I found the way to my vehicle in the parking lot, and I realized that I was singing the song as I walked. Merely doing so made me feel closer to my sisters and brothers. It was a powerful refrain. I began driving out through the heavily wooded area around Omega, and as I left the campus, I passed the large circle of women, still continuing that lovely ceremony. I slowed down to observe them one more time, and then drove through the deep woods. It was a sweet summer night, and I had the window down. I was alone on the dark road, and as I rounded a tight bend, there at the edge of the road, approximately 15 feet away, looking directly at me, stood the largest, most beautiful owl I had ever seen. Guider, I whispered, in awe of the bird's size and beauty. He watched me in the headlights for about 10 seconds, and then he opened his massive wings and, with one big swooping whoosh of them, lifted himself to a branch on the very edge of the road. Landing on the end of the branch in a big maple tree, he turned his head, and those large yellow-orange eyes looked right at me. There you are, Guider, I said as I crept forward slowly in my vehicle. I stopped only a few feet away from his tree, and we stared at each other, eye to eye, for seconds. Guider then simply fell from the tree branch, opened those massive 6-foot wings of his, and glided to yet another tree branch on the edge of the other side of the road. Settling there, he turned his big head and fixed those beautiful, luminous eyes on me again. This time, when I slowly crept forward to this great owl, he sat and quietly regarded me for a full minute. Now I got goosebumps, as I knew instinctively that this was Guider. He'd come to see me and to show me the way, to give me a message, to impart some sacred wisdom. Guider would continue to fall and swoop to successive tree branches, all on opposite edges of the road, a total of 6 times, and I would continue to idle forward to where he was as we stared into one another's eyes over and over. The experience was mystical, surreal, and profoundly touching. A car's lights began to loom out of the darkness behind me then, and I knew I had to drive, as sitting still in the road was no longer a good idea. As if he understood, Guider fell from the tree one last time, swooped closer to my vehicle as if to say goodbye, and glided off into the dark forest. What a truly magical experience! Though there may seem to be, there are no accidents at Omega. The person gets what they were supposed to get. That day I had performed my very first regression, something I had yearned to learn. The person I regressed had remembered a life long ago as a Native American. This had held great personal meaning for her. Native Americans have long known of the importance of a visitation from a power animal, and that same night I was gifted a wonderful visitation from mine. Guider seemed to be saying, "Welcome, you have found your right path. Now follow it, helping others along the way to where you will find your true self." As Brian would so often say that week, there are no accidents. We are all connected. Michael Brown. And, as Carol would say, sometimes miracles happen. If our hearts and minds are open and loving, we will find our right path and our true self. There will be many signs illuminating and confirming the way. I, too, have seen this group of women in the field. Sometimes they are all wearing white dresses or robes. With the white candles surrounding them, this is a marvelous sight in the dark of night. Their song is melodic, addictive. I hear the words, "You have loved me all these years," and the millions of years connecting all our existences and incarnations come to mind. How many thousands of sisters we have had over these lifetimes. As Michael began singing the simple words of that sweet song, his heart opened even more. He felt a connection with all his sisters and brothers, the entire human family. In that mystical and pure state, he was ready to meet Guider and to receive the confirmation he needed about his chosen path. There is a goddess in Celtic mythology who often took the form of a large, wise owl. Her all-seeing eyes allowed her to peer into the infinite depths of the human subconscious, of the soul. Her giant outspread wings bestowed healing and compassion upon anyone who sought her guidance as she flew powerfully through the night. She lived in and ruled over that heavenly place where souls awaited rebirth, and where poets were said to be learning the wisdom of the stars. It was she who decided whether a soul should be given a new body or sent on to a higher spiritual realm. A symbol of feminine power, she is the deity of karma, of past life memories, of reincarnation. Perhaps Michael sensed her archetypal presence in that candlelit field of women as they sang of the ancient bonds of sisterhood. Perhaps he sensed it in Guider, the immense owl who graced his path again and again, or in the stars above on that sweet summer night, where resting souls eagerly anticipated new life. There are no accidents, Michael said, and he is right. There are no coincidences either. There is only the universe spreading its loving, angelic wings of comfort around our shoulders, guiding each of us on our way.